Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, make sure you check out the PoTown store, and you can even get a 5% discount on your orders using the code OmniPoke. For today's video, we have two regionals and a special event which occurred last weekend over on December 7th, and we're going to be looking over the top decks of the formats, all standard of course, so we get to see the progression of the Ultra Prism onto Cosmic Eclipse meta. We have some very interesting results from basically around the globe. We have one from Brisbane, one special event in Singapore, and also we have the San Diego regionals as well over in America. So we'll start off with the Brisbane regionals, and you'll see that the top 8 has a lot of Mewtwo. In fact, there's 5 Mewtwo lists in top 8, which is pretty incredible. Also, within that top 8, there was one ADP, one Malamar, and also Henry Brandt with the Giratina Garchomp Miss Magius deck. So we'll be looking at all of those lists that we have. It looks like we're only missing Shang's here. So we have 7 of the 8 lists, and also you can get a brief look at the top 16 here, where there was a couple of Guardians, Baby Blowns, a couple things in and around as well. Reshizard coming 9th, another ADP, nothing too crazy. Another Luke Metal as well, which is a bit of a sort of sub-topic of this weekend, where Lucario Melmetal did pretty well. I wonder if this is a welder list. I'll quickly look at this. Yeah, this is another welder-based build, so we'll see someone else's Luke Metal list later on that did very well in a tournament as well. So for now, though, let's jump to Matthew's first place Mewtwo list. He was able to beat Brandt in the mirror in the finals, and the list looks relatively standard from what we're seeing here. It's obviously a Jirachi-based build, which has become pretty much the bread and butter right now, just because you're less Dedenne reliant. You can see they're only playing 2 copies, so it's very sort of selfless and not using Dedenne change a lot of the time, which is pretty bold. It's made space for the Charizard and Breaksin, which I've seen here and there in a handful of lists, to be honest. Being able to Brilliant Flare after like a great catcher play is really cool. But usually I find myself just expecting my opponent to reset stamp me whenever I take multiple prize knockouts, so I never really am like a huge fan of this card, but it's still definitely like a big payoff kind of thing if you can just get a Brilliant Flare to stick, because they're playing this over Reshizard, which is pretty insane really. I like Reshizard still as a wall breaker, and I like the option to just go ahead and 200 on turn 1 and pressurize decks, so making that flip-flop is quite brave, I think, and it's interesting to see for sure. They're choosing to use the Greninja and Rainbow Energy kind of package alongside a couple Guzmahala, not just one copy, to get through Keldeo. Again, there's kind of been 2 schools of thought with Mewtwo. It's either been Greninja Rainbows, or like a higher Rainbow count, or it's going to be a higher Fire count, sometimes like 9 or 10 even, and you just play Turtonator to try and burst through a Keldeo all in one go. So 2 kind of methods around dealing with the Keldeo. This is the much sort of slower and steadier route, and you have to combine it with the double Malolana, which he has done, so you can keep healing your Mewtwo as they keep healing their Keldeo, and you go back and forth that way. From there, we're seeing no communications, just the treasures, the tag calls, and the cherish balls. Interestingly, for the support account, we're just seeing double Malolana, double Guzhala, no copies of Sinlin, so tag call is not an out to draw you cards, it's just a tutor card for Guzhala. And when he's playing such a low Dedenne GX count, it's pretty wild to not play Sinlin. They have very low odds to actually Dedenne change on his opening turns. So in terms of draw power, this is one of the sort of more greedy Mewtwo lists, I want to say, because they don't have as many outs to just raw Dedenne. They don't have comms, they only play 2 Dedenne rather than like maybe a staple 3, I would say, most of the time. I think if we were to look at the stats on Mewtwo lists, I would say it's around the sort of 2.8 kind of range for the amount of Dedenne GX people playing Mewtwo in this meta. Some people still play 4 copies, for example, so yeah, like, I think the Dedenne count is pretty low. I think forcing in the extra Guzhala, for me, feels like it's just a flip-flop that I would probably make a lot of the time. But early access to Guzhala is still pretty reasonable, you know, I can't knock it too much, because it can help you access those early weak guards and rainbows for those situations. It can get you early Stealthyhood to defend you against Ability Zard. Escape board, obviously great for Jirachi. So nothing too crazy with the Mewtwo. I think the supporter line is kind of questionable when there's no Sinlin and a lower Dedenne count. It's kind of like both going on top of each other as being reduced consistency. And also playing the Breakzard over Reshizard is also a strange call. But I like a lot of the other... Like, I like the counts of everything else. I like where he's dedicated his energy slots. I like where he's dedicated the Pokemon slots. Like, every sort of... If you compartmentize the deck, I like it. I would just kind of, like, play an extra Dedenne and cut a Guzhala and maybe work in a Sinlin. That would kind of be just my personal preference with Mewtwo, but... Everything else seems very good, and obviously it's got a win, so I can't knock it too much. We'll see now Brent's list. He too is actually playing... Are they playing the same 60? Wow, okay, they play the same 60. That's pretty wild. Okay. Yeah, exact same 60, so same comments as before, basically. It's wild to see no Reshizard. Alright, let's look at Angus's ADP list. It looks to be an ability ADP that got top 4. It's playing double Absol, which I absolutely love. I think it's so good right now. I think it's great for Mirror. I think it's great for Mewtwo. I think it's great for Ability Zard. Such a good card. And you basically play 2 copies just to access this guy early and just drop him on the bench. It's got the double Krogonal for control, which I also respect a lot. It's got the Giraffe Rig to help out Mewtwo. It has a Mewtwo and Mew GX in here. I think this is somewhat of a Guardian tech more than like a Mewtwo Mirror tech, because benching it can sometimes be suicide unless you just kind of like stamp them to like 1 or 2 and then pray they can't gust you. So I think most of the time this Mewtwo is just to counterbalance the weakness that you can have against stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the idea, I think, a lot of the time. And it can be another way to like Sonic Edge through opposing Keldeos that has more heal available to it. So this doesn't just die to like a Drampa, but you can still be Sonic Edging through Keldeos. So this is a nice one-off space that I think is pretty reasonable in the deck overall, especially because it does all of those things and also acts as a third ADP that you can just tag call out. So overall, it's like pretty reasonable, I would say. The support line also seems pretty solid. I think we're seeing no Rosa and no Bill's Analysis. I would kind of put my stake into one of those options. The fact that we're seeing none is a little bit awkward, in my opinion. I don't really know where the space comes from, because he is playing the high stamp count. I think a lot of the time people would just play 2 reset stamps and then have that Rosa slot or the Bill slot. I would kind of like to see that myself, but playing a 3rd reset stamp does just make you have it more often, which is also kind of fine. And the item cards seem very standard. I think Custom Catcher is pretty much staple in ADP going forward, with that one great catcher to supplement it. 1 Cherish Ball, again, I think it's kind of fine when you're not playing Dedenne, you can just cut the Cherish Ball even, I think, a lot of the time. Like, is this Cherish Ball actually ever better than just a 4th com or a 4th tag call? I think rarely ever. I think you normally have decent access to Keldeo already, without the need for like 1 Stellar Wishable Keldeo, basically. That's just my own 2 cents, but there you go. Got the double board. The 1 counter gain, which is, again, becoming a staple in ADP. I really like this for giving you some like false tempo in a way. To get attacking a lot quicker. Choice out as well for tankability. And it's playing the unit energies rather than the rainbows, which I also think is fine. It's a horses for courses type thing. If you want to play rainbows or units, it depends what you're like expecting to come up against a lot of the time. And rainbows are obviously worse against Mewtwo's, which has been everywhere, so he made the right call. We see the other top 4 player is Jordan Palmer with Malley. We see a lot of Malley this weekend as well. This list is quite different from the other successful lists we saw of Malamar. This is kind of like more traditional, I guess you could say, where it's got the Latios, it's got SBDO, it's got Mimikyu, both forms as well. So it's got, well, this Mimikyu I think is still very good against control. I think this Mimikyu obviously trying to help out that Mewtwo matchup. Interestingly, in a top 8 with 5 Mewtwo's, Jordan wasn't able to win the entire event. I don't know if he ran into... Well, he must have ran into a Mewtwo and lost, right? Because he was in top 4. And it was the Mewtwo finals. So it's not like you auto-win Mewtwo, but most people think this has a very favourable matchup, I would say. He's made a space by dropping a spell tag somewhere along the line. He's still playing triple Viridian, even though... Well, I mean, there's not a huge amount of ADP. There's like a good amount of ADP in tournaments. But Viridian Forest is a good card against like every other deck, so that's kind of fine. He's playing the Faber that helps out against Mewtwo. It helps out against Control, helps out against ADP if they Guzhala to get an energy attachment early. I think Faber has also found itself to be somewhat of a staple in Malamar. Some people are even playing Faber plus Sinlin to try and reuse Faber if it's a useful matchup. But overall, this Faber, again, it just really helps out the Mewtwo matchup, as does things like Mega Lopuff as a finisher. So yeah, it's a relatively standard Malley list overall, I would say. Similar to ones that we've seen previously. We've got Jack Miller's Mewtwo. We're just going to look at a bunch of Mewtwo lists, basically, and compare them all to one another. Wow, literally no one's playing Reshizard. I can't believe this. What's happened? Is Reshizard bad? Question mark. Oh, they're all playing the same list. Okay. So 3 of the same 60s in top 8. That's pretty good conversion, I would say. I don't know if they're the same team or they test together or something. Okay, I've finally seen a Reshizard in the list, but this one's still playing Cargo and Breakzard as well. So this has got all the fire attackers in here. This is a lot of... Okay, so this list is the non-Greninja list. So like I alluded to earlier, the Turtonator in here just to have a higher raw fire energy count. Just so you can like blow up a Keldeo if ever they come onto the board early. So yeah, this is a kind of more aggressive list. It's got the third Dedenne. It's got Mind Report to try and put a Welder back on top. You just see the 1 Guzhala, the 1 Malolana, the 2 Tag Call, kind of like a thinner Tag Call package, which again, I'm pretty much like a decent fan of, especially with the treasures coming in, being more versatile in this list exactly for your non-GXs. And yeah, that's where we're at, really. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I again think this energy count makes sense for the sort of list that we are playing. You basically always want to play just Psychic Energy because they don't need waters, but you play the 1 Rainbow to have Guzhala Synergy alongside that weak guard. So yeah, very solid Mewtwo list. I think, even though we've seen 3 of the other lists make top 8, I actually think this is my preferred list. If it was like me as a personal player, just fits my playstyle more, I would say. I like smacking things. So unfortunately we don't have Shang 60, but we will end on Henry Brandt, current world champs 60 cards, and he is playing the Tina Chomp Miss Magius list with a bunch of things going on here. As you can see, it has this same sort of package that we saw from the DDG guys, is like full-on Nagguz list, but it uses Tina Chomp as the front man instead. I think Tina Chomp is a much more aggressive front man, because early linear attacks just set up every tag team for Calamitous Slashes, which is pretty insane, and you get a lot of control over the board with GG End. I think overall, Tina Chomp just hasn't been used like enough in the game, and finally with like the tag call package that people can use, it's actually like more worthwhile seeing play a lot of the time. Like we actually saw Mark Lutz play a Miss Magius Marsh Champ Tina Chomp build earlier on in the season, but now we just have so much support for an archetype like this. It's pretty cool. We've got the Nagguz in here, which can still be a nice like healing option against ADP and still be a real menace. You can still try and do those plays where you take an early knockout on a non-GX, then you can just Calamitous Slash through something, and then you can just GX for game as well with Chaotic Order, which is always an option. It's got the Baby Blown in here, so I think a lot of the time you're going to try and use this against Pigeon-based decks, just to try and get like a huge amount of damage counters across the board. It can help out a lot against, for example, Baby Blowns, especially like if you're able to reset Stamp on the same turn, or against controlling archetypes like Birds and Florgus as well. You can try and just early spam your Miss Magiuses, kill all of those, and start Firework bombing as quickly as possible, because you have a very heavy Stamp package. The payoff of using the Tina Chomp as your main attacker is you get to play Green's Exploration, compared to like Bill's Analysis that we saw from the DDG Cruise sort of draw engine. There's also the mini tag team package going on, where you got 2 tag calls to help you get your Pokemon, as well as some of these supporters. Couple Guzhala. You can see there's 6 special energy, so plenty of options for this card, as well as establishing early Power Plant and getting you towards counter-getting Karate Belt. These are all like super important cards for the deck, to be honest. Sinlin for a bit of additional draw if you need to, and can be like, you know, a 5th greens or an extra Malolana, which is cool. Faber, again, same thing I was saying for Malley. It's a pretty good card against like ADP. It's a pretty good card against Control, because you can get rid of Sky Pillars, so stuff like that's pretty cool. We've got the heavy Stamp build, obviously with Miss Magius based. It's got 2 customs and 1 Great Catcher, which is pretty wild, but you are playing a greens based engine, so I don't hate it too much. And you also have that extra sort of added control of GG End, being able to target anything on your opponent's back line if you just can't deal with it instantly with a Gust. The one-of copy of Duststone. Now, I've not played enough with a list to know that one is enough, but you basically just greens for this card, right, and just try and pop off Mysterious Message. And against, like, ADPs, in fairness, you're only allowed to use one Mismagius anyways, so, like, I can kind of understand it. Got some, again, just lots of one-offs going on here, but you are a greens engine. One Beast Ring just for the Nag Guz. One Wait and See Hammer. This can slow down Mewtwo's and Ability Zards really nicely. I've added this into my Guardian, and it's a super, super good card for sure when you're a greens deck for slowing down tempo of some of these, like, Welder high rolly things. Counter-scaling Karate Belt, both in here to reduce those attack costs, which is pretty sweet. What's the reason of it being one Karate Belt? Oh, it's just to help out your energy issues? Okay, cool. But yeah, they're basically the same card, it's just the Karate Belt helps out if you, like, just happen to have just Dark and Psychic energies attached to this guy, which is kind of chill. And yeah, Power Plant based is pretty cool as well. Shutting down your Nag Guz isn't the biggest deal in the world, you don't worry about it. And a huge array of energies here, but you try and Beastring out the one of Dark and, like, one of these Psychic energies for the GX attack if you need to. And then you just have, you know, manual attachments and stuff on top of that alongside your tools, which help you accelerate energy. I say in air quotes because you're cheating attachments, basically. Because obviously Mismagius blowing yourself up feeds your opponent those prizes, so you can start taking big tempo swings with these cards. So yeah, pretty disruptive deck. We've seen how annoying, like, early Mismagius stamp plays can be. And obviously stamping your opponent down to 1 with Power Plant in, like, not even the late game. Like, sometimes it's, like, turn 3 when that happens, and then your opponent's deck is still, like, 30-something cards, and they have 1 card to play with half their outs just struck down by Power Plant straight away. But this is certainly a disruptive deck, and I think after seeing Gustavo do well with this sort of package, a lot of other, like, big-name players have started to play a similar 60. Shows that this certainly has a place in the meta for sure, so that's pretty interesting. This was a 152 Master player event, by the way, I should mention. We'll go on to Singapore, which was also just over that 100-player mark. And it was once again won by Mewtwo. So Mewtwo taking down 2 events of the 3. This time it's going to be Kaiwin who was able to take the win here. And we'll take a look at his 60. He actually played the same 60 as Clifton as well, who also got top 4 at this event. So a lot of Mewtwo players have been banding together to get similar sort of testing circles going on. They've got the Greninja Rainbow thing going on. They've got Charizard Breaks In. Now, man, so many people playing Breaksard. Is there something I'm missing out on? Is this card just so broken that we have to play it? I don't know, man. I don't know. It feels like a flexi spot for me. This always feels like the most flexible card in Mewtwo, and I am greedy in that I want more. Well, it's kind of not greedy to cut this card, because this feels like a luxury card to me every time I look at Mewtwo lists, and I want an extra switch card to help out against Absol. I want an extra supporter card here and there. Like, this isn't playing Sinlin. I want an extra tag call. I want an extra treasure. I want, like, a random A-spec Pokecom. I want a lot of things in my Mewtwo build, and this always feels flexible to me. I don't know about you guys. Do you guys think it's just too busted to play, or to not play? I'll hear it down below. Basically, forcing your opponent to stamp it's still, like, a reasonable thing, for sure. I don't know, though. This always feels flexible to me, especially when you're already playing, like, the Reshizard and stuff. A lot of these lists have also cut Magcargo, which is interesting. People are just playing low puff instead of Cargo now as, like, the finisher, I guess. Or just hoping that you have other means of finishing stuff off, which is kind of cool. It kind of feels weird for me to not play Turtle or Magcargo. I feel like you probably should be playing one of those, personally. I don't know, just because I've been playing Turtle build, you know? I like the treasure, the little mini treasure package. Like, Mewtwo goes in before Sinlin, I think, a good amount of times, just when you're already playing treasures anyway. Like, you want to be playing treasure in your list. There's just, you know, so many good outs towards your guys. But yeah, I like the item counts. I think everything looks pretty solid here. Like I said, maybe work in a Sinlin, maybe work in an extra card here or there. I would just cut the Charizard Breaks In and find a space from this list. That's what I would do, basically. And also, I wouldn't play Frog. I would probably play Turtle. But again, that's just me. Yeah, cool list though. So that was 1st and 4th place. So really, we only have one other list to look at. But what we can talk about is that Luke Metal got 2nd in this event, which is pretty wild. One ADP and one Greens ADP made top 8. Another Guardian as well. So there were Guardians in top 16 of Brisbane. It made top 8 here in Singapore, and there was another Tina Chomp, Miss Magius kind of deck, so good variety of decks over in the top. So far we haven't seen any abilities art, which is pretty interesting. We haven't seen any dolls or birds yet either, so Control hasn't had the best weekend. I think a lot of people have been adding in their Fabbers. I think a lot of people are adding different tech cards. Looks to me that this list has added in 1 Ultra Necrozma and 2 Metal Energies. Again, this can sometimes be a good control card. You can feed your opponent your own prizes just by shadow impacting your own stuff to get into range with an Ultra Necrozma GX. Obviously that gives them the time to clear vision you, but that puts down a 2-prizer into the active anyway, which is sometimes just good value for you to deal with at some point. This list is only playing 1 Great Catcher, which is pretty crazy. Only 1 Great Catcher and no Esper and no SBDO either. Wow, okay. So it's just trying to finish games a lot of the time with Sky Scorch. Very interesting list. Man, only 1 Great Catcher. I do like adding in Acrobikes. Acrobikes just like a decent card, but... Yeah, different tech Pokemon going into Malley for sure. This one also making a space with Mimikyu. I still don't like it. I'll continue to not like that card, but yeah. Maybe I am too greed. Maybe I just think Mewtwo should... I mean, I think Malley should beat Mewtwo enough without the card. Is that too much to expect from a Malamar? Does the Mimikyu let you draw worse and win games? I don't know. Maybe it gives you some breathing space to draw badly. Alright, we go on to San Diego, where Justin Bakari was actually able to win with this Tina Chomp Miss Magius list. Let's see how different this is to Henry's. Well, I know that a bunch of the guys all played the same list. You can see top 16, although it's not here for us to see. Rahul did make top 16 of the list, and I think a few other of their friends also played the same 60. I think Keon maybe, or a handful of other players piloted the same 60. Just from eyeballing the list, they don't play customs. They just play great catchers. They're playing a Surge that's different. The Pokemon line's the same. Their tool count is slightly different. They only play 1 of each instead of a 2-1. I think their energy count is slightly different as well. They don't play the 1 of physical dark energy to Beast Ring, but they play an extra fighting energy instead. So it's just a few flip-flops here and there, but it looks like this deck overall is performing pretty nicely. This also has a higher Cynthia Caitlyn count as well, and double Duststone. So yeah, there's definitely a few outlying differences in the actual build of the list, but we're seeing that the win condition of the deck is powerful, and it seems like this has overtaken the Naganadel Guzzlord deck in terms of which one's stronger. I haven't playtested with this list enough. I've only seen Gustavo in his top 8 game. I saw bits and bobs because I was looking at all of the top 8 games at the same time over in LATAM, so I didn't really get a good enough look at how the deck plays outside of just stamping people and being annoying and sort of pressurizing calamitous slashes here and there. So I need to play around with this deck a lot more to get my bearings with the list compared to the Nagguz deck, which I kind of just tried to combo off with all the time, which this feels a lot less sort of combo off because you play, less Dust Stones and stuff. And obviously you have greens, which is more like guarantees, whereas the Nagguz deck is trying to like Sinlin and bills into stuff, and sometimes you miss, and you want to use the Miss Magius to draw as proactively as possible. Whereas this deck feels like you kind of Miss Magius to draw a little bit here and there, but you're already guaranteeing stuff with your greens anyway, that the draw is kind of secondary. So yeah, it feels very different to that list, but yeah, both 60s doing very well and taking a win in the largest event, which is almost a 600-player tournament. And Malachi was also able to get a second place with Luke Metal. So did Luke Metal top 8 every one of the tournaments? No, it top 16 won and got 2 second places, right? That's pretty wild. This list is playing the Omastar in here, much similar to how we saw it in the Guardian build, where it's playing the 1 Pokecom, the 1 Candy, the 1 Fossil, and the 1 Omastar. It's also got a low puff in here for some extra burst damage if you need it to be, and it's obviously like a non-fire weak card. You're also playing the 3 Frying Pans, of course. It's the Welder based list that we saw previously. I can't remember what tournament it was, but it was obviously pre Cosmic Eclipse. It's got the Faber in here as well as the 1 Lucamine, so you're trying to beat out the Swells against a Keldeo. You also have a bounce to... Well, I mean, you play 3 Power Plant and Coronet, so you have a lot of means of trying to recover answers to Keldeo as quickly as possible. You've got all sorts of Gust going on. You've got the Malolanas. Obviously, Luke Metal's GX attack is filthy against ADP. If they commit their initial couple attachments to an ADP rather than a Keldeo, they can just, like, lose their guy quickly. They can just lose 2 turns of tempo, basically. Even if they GX attack before you, you just completely wreck them with that GX attack. I really do think Luke Metal's GX is super good right now in the format. If you can just, like, gust up a Mewtwo or gust up an ADP early, that can sometimes just give you so much momentum in the game. Obviously, this deck will struggle against Ability Zard, even with the Frying Pan, just because the damage output of Ability Zard is still super high, and being forced to, like, greens for Frying Pans and stuff just hurts your greens in general. It means you can't do, like, the things you want to do as much. But yeah, I think Luke Metal seems like a viable contender in the format, to be honest. Seems annoying enough against Malamar, obviously, with its reduction of damage and trying to spam Malolana against them. You have so much time. I mean, you reduce 80 damage coming into you just with Frying Pan, GX attack, resistance. So yeah, that's just really rude. It's obviously got a pretty decent ADP, I think. It's probably got decent, like, Mewtwo matchups and such. I think timing your GX attack is going to be super important with this deck. But trying to burst Welder onto the scene is always, like, an option to try and be more aggressive than you would think with a deck. Because you could literally, like, if you just high roll, like, a Welder Flint kind of thing, or if you greens into Welder Flint and turn 1 attach, you can then be threatening 150 on turn 2, which is actually, like, pretty good pressure. You're two-shotting tag teams from there, and you're already threatening the GX attack, like, throughout the game. So your opponent has to be worried about the sort of offensive and defensive approach at the same time. So, yeah, again, I think this is just one that we have to bear in mind and keep an eye out for. Obviously, I think you've got a pretty decent Guardian as well. Guardian probably should be playing weak guards at this point if it wants to succeed. So yeah, the deck seems pretty good. It's basically just a Guardian with more favourable typing, but probably a worse engine. I think this engine is dodgier. Like, trying to play 6 energy and Welder, 6 fires and 4 Welders is kind of like a dodgy engine, I think, overall. But it is supplementary, to be fair. So yeah, again, one to try out. Thrown its hat into the ring as another successful greens deck in the format. We see Kasiraga's ADP. His list is also ability-based. So ability-based has overall been winning out over greens ADP. I do think this list has just better defensive options. And again, opting to play double Absol, I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's definitely solid. Playing the 1 Cryo, the 1 Giraffe, and also playing 1 Drampa still. Drampa obviously gets through the Keldeos. People have moved away. Even though he's playing Rainbows, he's chosen not to play the Mimikyu. We see that the couple Roses coming into the build, obviously made popular by Xander last week. It's got customs going on. Yeah, all looks pretty simple, I would say. Playing Countergate over Choice Helmet is, again, just like a fine choice. Seems pretty good. A lot of people are playing the A-Spec Cherish Ball, which I find interesting still. I guess guaranteeing Keldeo is kind of fine, but when you play Rosa as well, is it even... I don't know. I'd probably play an extra com. I don't know. I also play 4 Tag Call in every ADP that I play, because if you miss turn 1 attachment to ADP, you literally cry. Play 4 Tag Call, please, guys. 3 is not the correct number, I don't think, ever. Another ADP, more ADPs. Let's look at the Malamar list that both Azul and Danny, obviously their teammates, they piloted to top 8 finishes. Now, obviously they're great players. They're going to be in top 8s all the time, but doing it with squids, it's pretty wild. Also, their list is pretty wild. They're playing the Tina Chomp in their own list for some good sort of stopping power, getting through some big things quite quickly. Some people may not expect this combo as well. They've really trimmed down on the Pokemon. They're not playing many tech Pokemon, right? They're just playing these 2. The Trevnoir, I'm kind of 50-50 about. Obviously, Night Watch is a really annoying attack for control decks, and it can really just slow down their development. I don't know how much they do it against control. I don't know how much they use this card in conventional games, I guess you could say. There obviously are those moments where your opponent just has a low hand size and you just punish them randomly and, like, win the game off of this card. But they're not playing stamps. They're not playing any other, like, hand disruption at all. they're just trying to like night watch in good moments, basically. So I don't know if this is exclusively to help out against control that are trying to like Stevens into you and stuff. You just start night watching them and making life awkward. But I don't know the full extent of this card, to be honest. But at the very least, it's a decent tank that can two-shot tag teams, and obviously it can one-shot Mewtwo as well. So, and that's without the help of like Spell Tag and Distortion Door and stuff. So probably a reasonable card, I would say, overall. They've got the Mimikyu in here as well. They still play the Mew. They've got the Baby Blown. This is obviously a control card because they're playing the Faber, like an anti-control card and like Pigeon decks, basically. So yeah, again, just another build thrown into the mix. I really like the high Acrobite count because don't trust Malamar. It draws terribly. So they're maximizing the Acrobite count, and to sort of offset some awkward discards, they also play a Lana's Rod instead of like the 4th spell tag. I think this is just like clever deck building. I think because they're heavy Acrobite, they're giving themselves the option to discard a Pokemon that they don't want to, knowing that they can Fishing Rod it back, and knowing that hopefully if this card is in like the bottom % of your deck, you know, like halfway through your deck or whatever, you can also get back a spell tag at that point, probably most of the time. So the Fishing Rod is only a worse card in like the first 12 cards of your deck or something like that. And then every other time it's mostly better, I would say. And it enables the Acrobites to be more aggressive for digging purposes, which I think is cool. So yeah, I think overall, another Malamar deck in the mix. We've seen all sorts of Malleys. They've been teched out here, there, and everywhere. And these guys running the Chomp, bringing it back. Remember when this flopped Worlds? Well, he's back, apparently. That's the old 1-1 tech, doing bits. So yeah, Danny played Malley the week before as well. I think he got he did pretty well with it. I don't think where did he get? Maybe top 16, something like that. And then he came back and played Squids again and convinced some other teammates to do so at the same time. Pablo played ADP like a normal human being, and he's playing a pretty solid list. I think he's playing one card different from Xander's 60 from what I saw in his post. I can't decipher what that one card is. We can maybe see what it is. Did he only play one Krogonal? Is that the difference that he played? I can't remember. But yeah, solid ADP. He's playing triple Mellow Lana, so that's probably the card that he added into his list, I want to say. Maybe just expecting Mirrors and Malleys, which is obviously pretty decent because there was lots of those. So yeah, triple M and L just to heal up a bunch of damage. But yeah, solid 60. Really good base. And again, like this is the base that initially was brought to us by like Pedro. And then people trimmed away like the ends resolves and stuff and changed them for roses essentially. So it was like from Pedro to Xander, and now Pablo's made like his one change to the 60. And it'll probably keep just adapting card by card, basically ADP as the weeks roll on. It just seems like the base is solid all the time, and it's just a pretty decent deck overall. So yeah, those are all the decks that we have. As you can see, there was a Baby Blounds in this top 8. And lots of ADP. So triple ADP, 2 Malleys, no Mewtwo's in this top 8 at all, which is pretty wild. And no Ability Zard made top 8 once again. So overall, Ability Zard has done the same thing it did at Worlds, right? It had its one like beacon of hope, and then it's been doing terrible like from then on. If we can, I'll quickly just jump over to this and see how the how decks are looking right now from the Ultra Prism to Cosmic Eclipse format has been going, and looking at the decks conversions right now. So I've split this into variants. So it looks like Mewtwo ADP. Malley's actually 3rd right now in the amount of points it's earned. That's wild. That's the highest it's been for a long old time. Zard's still getting a good amount of points. Control's still up there. Guardian doing pretty well. I feel like Dolls will probably leapfrog Pidgeotto at some point as well. It feels like that's going to happen overall, because for me, I still feel like there's a lot of good techs out there for Pidgeotto control right now. Just because people are teching for Dolls, kind of Pidgeotto gets caught in the crossfire a little bit more, I think, because they're a more particular lock than Florges, which can have the space for all the tech one-offs to try and beat the techs, if that makes sense. And then we have Garchomp Giratina Tag Team, which has only just started. I mean, it did get a performance at LATAM, but also a handful of other people are starting to play it in regionals and specials now, so I imagine this will start creeping up as well. It is quite a peculiar deck and quite difficult to play, not very easy for like the general public to pick up, but I certainly can see it like jumping over like Green's ADP, for example, within the top 10. Same for Luke Metal. I think that's a simple enough deck that we can see like slightly on the rise. And interestingly, down here, the Persian box deck. I don't know if we can see any lists for this. But we started to see this become a bit of a thing. Here you go, in San Diego. Oh, has this recently just been updated? Has this all been updated while I've been doing this video? Let's have a look. Oh my god. Surely not. Oh my god, it's been updated. Incredible. Robin's at work. Alright, you can see, we get a bit better picture of the top 16 then. Where there were a couple of these Persian box decks in top 16. We'll have a look at this now as my computer decides to be dying. Because this is a lot to piece together. I'm just going to sort of leave this here and not try and describe what's going on. But essentially, the idea is you spread damage with Roxy Wheeze combo, like a bunch. And then you're going to Stinger, and then you're either going to try and win off of a big magical swap after a Stinger. You know, you can like Stinger, let this die, catwalk towards your combo. Or you can do just like good old-fashioned knock stuff out that's in front of you and combine it with reset stamps and stuff. So, yeah, pretty wacky 60 overall, and something that we'll have to try out because, you know, there's stuff going on here. There's a Alolan Ninetales and a Whimsicott going on, so there's stuff for every occasion, as Checkmate kind of does, and it got, 2 top 16 placements, so who knows, maybe even this will be playing the ladder going forward. Keep an eye out for a CCG pie chart. Going to be on the Facebook pretty soon, I'm sure, now that we have these in Limitless. That means they're available for us to make a nice graphic over. So if you want to get a better picture of what the day 2 looks like, rather than just tallying it up all yourself, we'll do it for you. No problems there. But yeah, that's going to be the discussion over these top 8 decks. Let me know what you guys thought about it all. Where are decks positioned right now? What's top tier? What changes? What do you think of Malamar? What do you think of Mewtwo? What do you think of Charizard breaks in Mewtwo? I'll hear it all in the discussion down below. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll be back with another video tomorrow. Cheers.